Welcome, everyone, to a fantastic Sales Hacker live event. It is a special day, not just because it is Tuesday with all twos, but because we have got an absolutely stellar panel of experts here to talk about why your top reps are choosing to look elsewhere. So it's going to be a much needed conversation about culture, diversity, compensation, and more. So I'm very excited for you to meet the guests here in just a moment. But we're going to give folks just a few more minutes to roll in. So thank you to everyone who has joined so far. So quick housekeeping. We want this to be super interactive. So back and forth conversation. So open up your chat. Tell us who you are. Share your LinkedIn link if you want. We're also going to launch a poll just so we get us using all these fun features here. We want to learn who's here, who's with us. When you have questions today, we want to hear them. So your incredible host, who I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment, we'll pull them in as they come. So we've got a Q&A box. You'll probably want to have that open to drop in that Q&A box any questions you have along the way. That way they don't get lost in the chat. So without further ado, your host today, the one who's going to be facilitating a really thoughtful conversation, is none other than Brian Smith Jr. Thank you, Brian, for sharing your time and wisdom today. Would you please introduce yourself, and I'll let you take it away with kicking us off and introducing the phenomenal panel we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. I'm sure you could be doing a million different other things right now, so we'll make sure this is super valuable for you. As Sam mentioned, I'm Brian, currently the Revenue Enablement Manager at Vendition. And what that means right now is I have a heavy focus on working with our partners to make sure they maximize our services that we provide. This topic today it's important. I think it's a conversation that a lot of people are having, but not having externally or with other people, so we can have a conversation about it. So the topic again is, we're going to talk about 5 different reasons why your SDRs are looking elsewhere. We're going to talk about so many things from diversity to quota to compensation to culture, which is a really big thing. Make sure you answer the polls. Love to see who's in here so we are aware of our audience. First step is knowing your audience. So make sure you're answering the polls. And as we kick it off, I'd love to introduce Jason. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself? And then as an icebreaker, maybe just share with us your all-time favorite concert you've attended.
Oh, all-time favorite. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, so first of all, hey guys, my name is Jason. I'm a Director of Global SDRs here at Big ID. We're a data intelligence platform. I'm really excited to talk about this. I think we've been very, very lucky to hold a lot of the talent that we've had at Big ID as well as some other places. So to share some ideas and answer some questions. Favorite concert all time, I'm a huge U2 fan. So I would have to say probably the 360 tour, because that's the first one that I took my wife with instead of going with the fellas, and we had a great time. It was in the rain, and we were down in the pit, and Edge was playing the guitar in the rain, and he was like 5 feet from me, and you could see the water coming off the strings, and it was just magical for me. So that would be my favorite concert.
Love it. Thanks for you being here, Jason. I'm a big YouTube fan as well. Love live music. Sophia, love for you to introduce yourself, and then maybe share us your favorite concert you've been to.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Sophia Yamauchi. I work at Asana, and I oversee our Asana Up apprenticeship programs. Happy to speak a little bit more as to what those entail later. And let's see here. I'm based out of San Francisco, Bay Area. My favorite concert, I would have to say, was the Beyonce and Jay-Z On the Run. That was in 2014, I would say. My sister Penelope, who actually works for Vendition, she invited me and had amazing tickets, and it was the best experience. We also got to go with our mom, who's a huge Beyonce fan. So it was a great experience overall.
Love it. I've actually never been to a Beyonce or Jay-Z fan or a concert, so I'm officially jealous. Last but certainly not least, Sophia, thank you for being here. Morgan, introduce yourself. Let us know. This is going to be interesting because I know you go to a lot of concerts. I'm interested to hear what your favorite concert is.
I have
You better not say who I think you're going to say.
I'm not gonna say him, but I have been to a lot of concerts. But yeah, me background, done a lot of sales development, coaching, and training for most organizations you know of, Zoom, Salesforce, etc., on their pipeline and how to do better at cold calling, emailing, etc. And the so this is gonna might surprise a lot of people. The best concert, honestly, that I've been to is Justin Timberlake in downtown Atlanta. He killed it, y'all. He only took one break. He went for 3 hours. He danced. He can sing. He can play the piano. Dude's got move. I don't even know. I was just like, this dude is killing it. So Justin Timberlake is definitely up there. There's a lot of them because I've been to a lot of music festivals. But if I said to say concert, Justin Timberlake for sure.
I did not see that coming.
No, I know you didn't.
He's very talented. He is very talented. I love all the different kind of genres that kind of happen there. Naturally, I guess I didn't give mine. It's kind of hard for me to pick, honestly. I moved to Atlanta and was just like dropped into the middle of where everybody comes through. So I'd probably say Chance the Rapper, honestly, was like, it's between him and Kanye, but Kanye's a little controversial right now. So I'll say Chance the Rapper. Mainly because the music was just live, it was outside. And again, knowing your audience, he engaged so well with his audience. So I'm going to say Chance the Rapper's concert. The Coloring Book was the album then. So enough of that. Hey, just real quick, looks like we have a pretty solid amount of people from the manager side here today. So we want to make sure we're intentional about speaking to the people who are managers that are here. Speaking of the people here, managers versus individual contributor, I'd love for you, if we're going to drop a poll, I'd love for you to tell us or give us a reason like why you are here, right? Obviously to hear about like other reasons why your best reps may be looking elsewhere. But we have some specific things we want to see why you're here. So without further ado, let's kick this thing off. Let's talk about reason number one. Let's talk about work-life balance. This is always interesting, I feel like, when we talk about this, because most people, there's not a gray area. It's either like there's no such thing, or there is a such thing. So I would love for you, and maybe let's throw this to Sophia. Let's talk about this. You and I've talked before just about the different things Asana's doing. Let's talk about work-life balance. For you, maybe just share a little bit about for you at Asana what it's like with the work-life balance. What are some things that Asana measures a healthy culture of work-life balance, and how do you do that?
Sure. Happy to speak to that. And before I get into that, maybe it's helpful to share just a little bit more for those in the room who don't know what Asana is. Asana is a work management platform that helps teams orchestrate their work from daily tasks to strategic initiatives. And so really with Asana, we help empower teams to feel more confident, move faster, and really accomplish more. Our mission is to help humanity thrive by enabling the world's teams to work together effortlessly. So as a company, our mission is deeply rooted into helping people become more efficient, be more collaborative with one another, and really enjoy the work that they're doing, because they can lean towards leaning towards driving impact instead of staying focused on the busy work and the busy tasks. In terms of work-life balance, I would say overall at the company, there's an extremely strong and very positive culture around work-life balance. Asana knows as a company that it's important to embrace both the focus areas as well as the areas for downtime or for play or for some of the things that we say, gratitude, which is one of our core values. And so the way that we think about work-life balance on a holistic scale is really setting the intention around putting yourself first and making sure that you have your safety mask on first. And then we ground these by supporting all of our employees with benefits that really help our Asanas thrive. And so in terms of a benefit that anybody has access to, including our Asana Up apprentices, include access to connecting with a therapist for mental health benefit, access to connecting with a professional coach. You can really align on what your challenges or your blockers are. Or when we go back into the office and it's safe to do so, we have a full culinary team that's dedicated to making Asana's nourishing, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's not just for the sake of having another tech perk, but it's really to ensure that our Asanas are able to have the space and time to connect and collaborate with one another, and not having to think about, again, kind of the busy work side of the elements. And then more specifically on with the focus of specific work-life balance within sales. I am on the talent. I am represented underneath the talent acquisition team, specifically on our diversity talent programs team. But I work really closely with our SDR apprentices and our sales teams to gain a deeper understanding of their day-to-day and what their workload might look like. And coming from a prior SDR role, I started out as an SDR, so I know the grind and how busy it can feel and overwhelming. We do a lot of work with our team to align what does the day look like? How can we ensure that our apprentices, our sales members are not working, more than what's expected, which is the 40-hour work week. We want to ensure that you have the space and time to be really good and focus in on your work during that allotted time, and also have the space and time just to take care of yourself, and ensure that you can recharge. And then the last thing I'll say is an emphasis just on taking time away. Asana is very intentional about encouraging time and space for people to rest and recharge. We have specific Asana holidays dedicated to just days off, where people can, as a collective, take time away. And that's something that's extremely encouraged. And I know in a quota carrying role that can feel stressful. So we really set the intention around building the time and space where everyone is taking that time and space away, and then creating the space where people can be reinvigorated and activated in their roles as well.
Yeah, I love that. Like at the end right there, that just kind of summed up like just work-life balance is being able to provide the space for people to have that opportunity to even have that balance, right? That is absolutely wonderful. And I'm just looking at our poll here about like why are people here? And this is actually shocking to me, is that a lot of people here to get ahead of the curve versus dealing with SDR turnover. That's really interesting. I'd love to break that down maybe after this with a couple of people. Mainly because 2021, right? It's no secret that over 4.5 million Americans literally quit their job, right, because of what was happening in our society. And so this is a really interesting thing that a lot of people are trying to get ahead of the curve. Morgan, let me talk to you. You've been in a couple of different interesting roles. You've been a manager. You've been an IC. You've been a trainer. You've done a lot of stuff. Talk to me about work-life balance.
All right, so some of y'all are gonna get a tizzy about this one, so it's completely cool. So some people may agree with me. Some people may agree with me, may not. So I actually don't. I don't like the term work-life balance. But here's why. I'll give you why. Because when you think about work-life balance, right, just as like this pen is evenly balanced, that means it's heavily weighted. So that means that basically what you're doing is saying, hey, I'm gonna go do work to do work, and I'm gonna go do life to give life, but you separate those things. And essentially, like how I see, let's say, work-life balance in a term is replacing that and calling it a work-life flow. Now, what is a flow? Just as if you go see a river or something of that nature, you notice that the water flows through as long as, right, a log or something doesn't impede that flow of the river. Now, in life, for anyone, the log could be anything. You getting in front of your own self. It could be a leader stopping you from doing what you need to do. So we do have logs, but I do believe in the work-life flow, because one thing I see from training, from managing, from doing all the different things that I've done from the coaching perspective is a lot of managers truly don't sit down and understand what is the rep trying to accomplish outside of the quota. Yes, you need to hit your quota, but what are you actually trying to do? There are thousands of SDR roles right now. You can go be SDR pretty much anywhere you want to, but why did you pick that company? And I don't think a lot of managers ask that question. Like, why are you here? Why did you pick this company? There's 1,000 other SDR roles. You could be cold calling somewhere else, but why here? And then once we understand why that is, then we can figure out what are you actually looking to accomplish in your life? Why did you pick an SDR role or an account executive role? Or why did you go into management, enablement, talent acquisition? I don't know, but I don't think a lot of managers ask, or leaders ask these questions. Why are you here? What are you looking to accomplish? And what are you looking to do? So that, talking about driving impact, like we just mentioned earlier, that can also drive impact, because now I know why the people are actually here. But if you don't know why the people are here, if you're just saying, hey, go make some calls, go do some emails, that's why people are leaving. because they can probably go find something else that will drive their impact and find people that truly care for them. And most one-on-ones, you could even take a step back and look at if you are a manager right now for the first time, ask yourself, do you start with the numbers or do you start with their life first? I just want you to think about that. Like, do you start with the numbers or do you start with their life? Because if you ask too much about the numbers, then they realize, this person doesn't really care about my life. Then that's where you find obstacles. So how I see this is a work-life flow. I should feel good about what I'm doing in my work so I can live my life. But when I'm living my life, I'm just living my life. I'm doing what I need to do. But I see it as a flow, not a balance. But that's me.
Yeah, Morgan. That was a mic drop. I appreciate that. Got my whole philosophy over here. I'm writing stuff down. Like, you need to go work on this. Jason, you know, you're managing a pretty large team. You have managed teams. You know, I'm really curious. Like, I don't want to say you're a veteran, but from the small conversation you and I have had, I mentioned like you walk the walk and talk the talk. I'd love to hear this from your perspective. The person has a family, working full time. Talk to us.
Yeah, I think, and you can call me a veteran. It's okay. I mean, I know you're calling me old, and it is what it is, right? It's cool.
Brian taking shots on the webinar.
You know, it's there. I get it. Like it's happening. Yeah, I think what Morgan said. I like work-life flow because I hate the word work-life balance because to me it's just one of those catchwords that somebody puts up on a wall or that they put on a job posting about great work-life balance, and then what does that actually mean? For me as a leader of a team, I think that I have to mirror what I want my SDRs to be. You know, there's a lot of talk about like unlimited PTO is not really unlimited. I take a lot of PTO. I take mental health days, and I let my team know I'm taking a mental health day, that you guys should do the same thing as well. Because I could talk about it all day, but if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it, right? You're going to kind of do what the boss does. If he sends you an email at 9:30 at night, you're going to respond to the email at 9:30 at night, that type of thing. So I like that work-life flow. But for me, I take a look at, you know, work and life now that we're home. They are together, so there's not a balance between one and the other. It's all one thing that's happening. So I try to, like I said, I try to exhibit what I want my team to be. My daughter jumps in the room and she jumps on a Zoom meeting. That's great. Hey, everybody, say hello to Izzy. It's okay if your kids are crying in the background or you got some commotion going on. Like I said, taking PTO, taking mental health days, and then I encourage everybody to put life first. I tell them in the interview process, I tell them on the onboarding process, I go, your life comes first. Like Morgan said, you can go be an SDR anywhere. The leads will still be there when you get back an hour or two from now or whatever, tomorrow, whatever it happens to be. Life comes first. If you got to go to an appointment, if you got to run to the grocery store or something like that, I don't care, run to the grocery store, do it. If the results are there, that's fine. Then you know, we'll work with you however you want to work. And if you want to split up your day and take a nap in the middle, I don't care about those things if the results are there. And I tell people that I'll respond to emails saying, hey, sorry, but I was away for 2 hours, and I know it's a bit middle of the workday, but I was taking care of something. So I think it's really important to exhibit the behavior that you want the people to believe in. And then one thing Morgan said, why did you pick this company? So I ask in the interview process, what are you looking for out of a company, right? Tell me what your ideal company looks like so I can tell you, you know, truthfully what we can or cannot check off the box, or, you know, what boxes we can check off of your list of what you really want. And I think setting that expectation as people come in is a reason that we're able to retain a lot of people, because we're very honest about what you're going to get yourself into at our particular company and on our team, and what my expectations are and how I like to manage and things like that. So we have that conversation during the interview process, and allows us to set that expectation and make sure that when people come on board, they don't have that oh heck moment, you know, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days in, and then they're looking for another role and leaving us, and then we're stuck trying to find somebody, get somebody else ramped up, and wasting months and months of time.
I love it. So from what I'm hearing and what I'm gathering is that, one, we got to provide the space. We kind of heard that from Sophia about provide the space, being active, being proactive, right? When it comes to work-life, more, what is it, not balance, work-life flow, right? Work-life flow.
Hey, get that right, man. Don't, hey.
And then,
That's the new work-life flow now. Yeah,
Hey,
work-life no more.
get that right.
don't say work-life balance on LinkedIn, or we coming after you. All right. And we kind of heard from Morgan, right? Just the importance putting people first. It matters. And then Jason, what I heard from you is just lead. It has to start with leadership. If the leadership isn't doing it, then it's not going to happen with the rest of the company. And let me just give a quick shout out to my boss, Hannah. Like everything you all were just talking about, she does that, and I had to stop because me as a person that's been in this business for like the last 6 years, and it is a grind, like Sophia said. I almost get emotional the fact that like I think about I have a boss that is like doing all those things. So shout out to her, 100%. And then if you don't believe that what all the panelists have mentioned, in addition, in 2021, we screened about 30,000 candidates. And some of these topics that we're talking about were all big issues. And what was literally the determining factor of a rep either going with X company or Y company. As a matter of fact, on our team alone, I know there is a couple of people where these things were a must for them making a decision. And just for context, we're not talking about measuring whether they want to do a startup or they want to go work at a Fortune 100 company. It was a matter of like, who is going to provide a great work-life flow for me? Speaking about that, I'd love to go into our next topic. We just, sorry, I'm going to look at here, work-life balance. Okay. Perfect. Hey, I love this interaction. If you've got questions for the panelists, as a matter of fact, like, I got a question for Jason, Sophia, Morgan. Go ahead and drop that question in the chat again, because we love to answer any questions. We have time specifically at the end to be able to talk about those questions. But if you drop some in the chat now and it's around the topic, we may answer or jump in and talk about those as well. We don't have to just sit here and go through our agenda. So please feel free to drop in a few things. And if we got questions, feel free to pop them up to me. I'll definitely answer them. Real quick, I'd love to go to this topic for the sake of time, and then we can jump into a couple of questions if some people have asked. Let's talk about remote culture and flexibility, right? At this point, almost everyone has been remote. The time of how long they've been remote is, not necessarily important, but at least just being remote and having that flexibility of being remote. I think for Vendition, when we surveyed our partners pre-pandemic, 90% were in location. Like, hey, we're in office. Now, 35% of those partners are now hiring fully remote, and only 10 are in the office. So 65% of those companies are hybrid right now. So when we've interviewed or we've screened these 30,000 candidates, majority of them are saying remote. And if you're a hiring manager, you 100% feel this right now, the battle between that. Jason, I'd love to start with you if you don't mind. Maybe talk to us about that, right? Like, why is this important? Or what are some things that you can do, right, to keep your reps from looking elsewhere when we know the temperature right now is flexibility and how reps are working?
Yeah, I think, what I've tried to do is recreate an in-office environment as much as we can. I think for SDRs and inside sales reps, which is the groups that I've been working with the most, a lot of that tribal knowledge is really the value of being in an office. You can hear somebody talking to a prospect behind you. You can pick up on how they pitch our company or how they're handling an objection just by getting, by listening in to somebody around you. You can also turn around and kind of, commiserate with them over somebody that was kind of a mean person. I'm watching my language on the webinar, but kind of a bad guy on the phone, right? SDRs, we get that all the time. I used to joke that if we didn't get yelled at once a week, we weren't trying hard enough as an SDR. So we try to recreate that by creating a lot of little groups that can get together just by themselves and spend time. Of course, we enable them with things like Slack and we have Zoom. We have ways that we can actually communicate. But I think from the top down, building out time and making sure that on the onboarding they get exposed to 2 or 3 other SDRs specifically, and then those 2 or 3 SDRs are also in other groups among the team, whether that be around a new project we're trying to do, or an objection handling group, or just a breakout like a call script group or whatever. So we try to prescribe all these different groupings to make sure that everybody talks to each other, and then you just have to make sure that the managers are constantly reaching out. You're constantly reaching out, talking to folks. How are you doing? What's going on? If you have any questions, there's anything I can help with, being very proactive about that to make sure that someone doesn't feel like they're out on an island, and make sure you give them a chance to have that communication. We've also tried to make sure that we do global SDR get-togethers where we get everybody across the globe, and that's difficult because I've got people from basically circumnavigate the globe, right? So it's impossible to get everybody on a call at one time. But if you can do some large groups, and people get that experience with other folks on the team, and you grow those relationships, and then those relationships will continue over Slack, they'll continue over email, things like that. And one other thing we're going to do this year, we have one office in New York. We have a WeWork in Austin that we use. So sometimes people get together there. But what I'm going to try to do is make sure that quarterly we're having get-togethers in those regional areas. So for 2 or 3 days, all the SDRs come into Austin or come into New York or London, for our EMEA team or what have you, and make sure that a manager is there, myself is there, maybe our CMO that I report up to, whatever. But we try to just make sure we have a lot of those interactions, whether they be in person when you can, or a lot of interactions amongst their teammates. And it's not just, I have a problem, I'm going to talk to my manager. It's no, I'm going to talk to my buddy from training, or the other 2 SDRs I worked with in training, or my role play group. I'm going to talk to them about this. So those are some of the things we've tried to do to replicate that in-office experience where you have that group of people that can kind of play off of each other.
Morgan, you want to add a little bit of context? Just around, flexibility, remote culture, you added just a little bit of context to that from your experience, or even some advice to managers. Again, these SDRs are moving around, right? So from a person that has trained, interacted, in my opinion, being the leader for SDRs in constant, right? Give us some of your perspective.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, right? Because a lot of people feel like, and they might be, let's not put it that way, but they feel like managers like, oh, my reps aren't doing anything, right? So if they're not in office, they're not doing anything. I'm freaking out. I don't know what's going on. And I think it's one of those things where you have to trust your team to go do those things and take action on it, right? So there's a lot of different tips of what people could do from a virtual environment and how to go about it. I think ultimately it's the mindset of, okay, we have our people working virtually. What can we do? Jason mentioned a couple things of what you could do to meet a person if you have that capability and you have a lot of people within that region. But I think one of the best things that you can do is create energy virtually. So do you have a channel that's sharing wins of different channels? And what I mean by that is, do you have a channel that's focused on cold calling wins? Do you have a channel that's focused on email wins, video prospecting wins? Do you have these things? Because what happens is a lot of people are like, oh, well, this isn't working. And you could have a channel where people are sharing their success and people can learn from each other. The biggest miss right now for SDRs, and all managers and individual contributors can agree to this, is that you're not in it. So you don't hear people's calls. You don't see the emails in person. That's how you learn quickly. And when you don't have that, obviously it's a big gap for a lot of people, especially when they're new. So in order to do that, you have to create the energy. So you have to be like, what are these different channels that we can create? So when people look at them and they see them, they're like, wow, okay, we are doing really well on calls. We are doing really well on emails. People can say that we're not doing well there, but if they see the channel seeing wins, it's hard for them not to. So that's just how I would do that in a virtual environment. You have to create places of energy where you've lost that place of energy.
Love it. Let's answer a quick question because I don't want to get too far away from earlier about a couple of different things we were talking about when it comes to flexible remote culture, and then also work-life balance. Kevin had a question. I'd love to answer it, or let the panelists jump in if they like. So he said, I'm curious how people go about balancing a 40-hour workload with optimizing peak connection time For example, adjusting schedules to account for the regions the SDR is targeting.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, that harder question to gauge because it also depends on like if you have a global team, right? So there could be, for example, I went to go train in India, and I know that they have different time zones that they target, so they have to be awake for certain time zones, right? So they allocate the time that they're awake to the time zones that they're calling. So that's just another thing as well. And maybe you have to take that suggestion to your team. Hey, someone may come in the office or start working at 11, but that's because they target a certain zone that isn't up until 8, right? Because maybe they're East Coast and West Coast. So these are just things that I'm throwing out there, but you have to figure out where's my team at, who are they targeting, and how should they allocate their schedules towards that. And you also have to be comfortable with them doing that. Some people may start at 11, but they don't finish till 8, right? It's because they have the West Coast. These are just different things to just keep in mind across the board. Obviously, easier said than done, but this is just my suggestion.
I think one thing too is, if you have a decent tech stack that starts with something like an Outreach or a Sales Loft or one of those types of tools, all of those will show you your hot spots, and you can then build your day around those hot spots. And we'll find, and I'm sure all of us know this, right? But email reply rates are later in the day, early in the morning, like in the middle of your workday is not when your prospects are usually going to engage with you. So if you can, we try to hire people in the region, so they're not doing the time zones like Morgan was talking about with that Indian company. But if you can, again, supporting remote work, I don't care where people are. If they're in the West and I'm hiring for the West, you can be in Seattle, LA, I don't care, wherever, as long as you're in that area. And then look at your hotspots and shape your day around that, and give yourself time in between. Like I said, take a long lunch, because nobody's really gonna interact with you at that particular time, or get a later start because the mornings aren't great or whatever it happens to be. So it's really about just kind of building out where are your hotspots for activities, so you can maximize those activities in those times, and then build the rest of your day around it.
Sophia, I've got you mentioned you work close with some of you oversee the Asana program, and then you work close with some of the SDRs being brought into that program. Maybe from a recruiting perspective, it may be interesting for you to answer this from your perspective on when you're hiring and recruiting, right? I'm sure you're having conversations with people all throughout the U.S. I'm not sure if Asana is global, but you've got to kind of adjust your time, right? When recruiting, I'm sure managers have to do the same thing. If you're on the West Coast and you're a hiring manager and you've got to call somebody on the East Coast, right? That's a time difference. So maybe talk to us from that aspect of recruiting people, because again, people are leaving. It's a competition, and this almost seems like a speed thing as well. So maybe talk to us a little bit about your perspective on recruiting people that are in a different time zone in order for them to become a part of your company.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it just starts with actually going back to what Morgan was saying around starting with your why, and understanding what is the candidate's motivation up front, what's important to them, what do they want to prioritize as they're going about their search, and what types of companies are they looking at. Trying to, similar to those prompting questions that you're asking in sales, prompting and probing, trying to gain a deeper understanding of what is it that this person is interested in, maybe also what are the pains that they're experiencing, and what's causing them to make this change right now. And the biggest thing around the recruiting sequence is just making yourself available and customizing. I think that in this day and age, especially with everybody's access to, or a good amount of folks access to being able to either hop on a phone or hop on a Zoom, just prioritizing those aspects. And then on the recruiting aspect as well, particularly in sales, and something that we noticed with in our work with Vendition, was that Vendition was sending us candidates, and there were really great candidates that were getting swooped up before we could even get to the on-site process. So it was about changing our mentality and reframing, what do we need to include in the interview process? Are there ways that we can optimize this process to make it a better experience for the candidate, so that they can make a decision earlier in comparison with the companies that they're talking to in addition to Asana? That led to a change in a lot of positive results for us. So not only thinking about what's important to the candidate, but thinking how you can optimize the process that's already in place to make the experience even better.
Love it. Thanks so much for sharing that insight. Hey, again, two things. We'll go through the 5 reasons why SDRs, your top SDRs are leaving and looking elsewhere. First thing we talked about, right, is work-life balance. Sorry, work-life flow is how we are rebranded that. So appreciate that. Second thing is flexibility and remote culture that we just kind of covered. And then the next thing that we're going to lead into is well-being and mental health. It's a very big discussion as well, especially for the SDRs. The job it's a grind, like Sophia said earlier. We're gonna get to that in just a second. I want to answer one more question. This question is from Jill. How can companies communicate that they're thinking about work-life flow? Love the flow. See, I love it. Work-life flow to candidates without making it sound like just another perk.
So the answer to this question is, when you're trying to talk about anything, even when you talk about diversity, it's not just saying, oh, we're just diverse, or let's do mental health. The answer to the question is, what are you doing? Do you actually have a plan? Oh yeah, we're diversity, but we have no one in our C-suite who's Black or Hispanic or women. Clearly, you're not doing anything to take action there. So the goal here is, yes, this is what we're doing, right? We have a mental health plan. Shout out to even internally here at GB Sales, like we have like a $250, right, to go, right, and do whatever we want to go do from a mental health perspective. So I go do float tanks, I do infrared sauna, I do cryotherapy. I could talk about these things another time in detail, but the whole thing is that there's a plan. So it's like, hey, we have mental health, and this is what we do. Monthly, we have a person come in and they do a guided meditation with you. You also have, I don't know, Headspace for yourself, like that you have this membership. And we have someone who, like, if you're in an office, they do yoga. I'm literally making stuff up. But the thing is, like, that is okay. You actually have a plan for mental health. You actually are doing something. But if someone says, yeah, we're focused on mental health, but they have done nothing and they can't tell you, you probably shouldn't go there. Just straight up. Like, you just have no plan for it. It sounds cool because it's the cool thing to say, but we need to have action steps in order to actually accomplish mental health, not just, oh, we're doing it, but you don't have anything I just mentioned.
I love it. Sophia, you wanna share a little bit about just as far as when it comes to SDRs looking elsewhere, because mental health and well-being is an important thing that people in this environment are looking for. Can you share some insight from your perspective?
Sure. Yeah. I could speak to the benefits that we provide, or like following through on what Morgan was saying is, touting the benefits, but do we support it? Yes, we have access to therapists through Modern Health. We have access to a gym reimbursement monthly. In our office, we do have a gym. We have meditation and yoga spaces. Again, the culinary team to help provide a nourishing healthy meals. Those are all great and benefits that are extremely beneficial if you want to take advantage of them. I think another thing is just, how do you, on a mental health perspective, how do you create space for people to show up as their whole selves? And that's really important. And it's important for us to acknowledge that these benefits might help people, but if someone doesn't have psychological safety in the space that they're working in, or if someone doesn't feel that they can speak up in a place with their teams, or provide a recommendation or an improvement, or let someone know when something is going wrong, then that actually kind of balances out all the benefits in a negative way. And so at Asana, some of the things that we really prioritize are not just diversity, but inclusion first. What does that mean? That means creating space for employee resource groups. That means creating space and opportunities for people to have real talk. We our head of diversity and inclusion, Sonja Gittins, who was higher number, I think 150, which for a tech company, that's really, really remarkable to have a head of D&I that early on. She has a Real Talk series every quarter where it's a space for employees to show up and share what's on their minds, and we address real topics. I joined Asana in June of 2020 when a lot in the world was going on that was surrounded around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and it was a very heavy space to be not only living in the world, but also joining a company. And one of the most remarkable experiences that I've had at Asana was on my 5th day, there was a real talk where employees were able to enter a safe space and share what was on their hearts, what was on their minds, or just listen if they didn't want to talk. And it was extremely impactful, and that I've seen shown up when things are flaring up in the AAPI community, and that's specific to me and my own experience. And I just really appreciate that there's space and time for people to be themselves and also share what's getting in the way of being able to focus on work. So that's the additional that I'd add on of, in addition to the benefits, really rounding out with creating space for people to show up as themselves.
I love it. Jason, if you don't mind, I'm trying to watch for the sake of time. This is a good segue to talk about DE&I specifically, right? When it comes to DE&I commitment, right? So establishing resources for things such as ERGs, inclusive language, training for LinkedIn. One of the biggest things I love to point out, LinkedIn and Forrester got together and they did a study around DE&I commitment. And this stat, it's insane, but it's like, duh, right? So the average lead to opportunity conversion rate was right around 54% with their teams. Anyone else, right? So their opportunity customer conversation rate is 24%, while laggards is 19%. So teams that had a DE&I commitment or DE&I practices performed much better. It's almost like when I say that, it's like, duh, but the reality is reality, right? It's not happening everywhere. Jason, I'd love for you to talk to me, man. Just talk to me about like previous experience, currently, DEI commitment, why is it important? What can these managers do to keep their reps from leaving because the current company they're at may not be providing that type of commitment?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to be a partnership with the HR team and recruiting team, and making sure that they understand what you're looking for, and that diversity that is really important to you. I mean, it's one of the first things I came in and said to my recruiter when I started at Big ID is that I've tried to have very, very diverse teams. We need to make sure that if we're seeing a pattern, we need to break that pattern, or we need to look at different avenues to try to find candidates and things like that. Our HR team is growing and is adding people specifically for that. So a lot of the stuff that Morgan and Sophia talked about a little bit earlier are getting added right now. And so if someone were to say, I think like Morgan said, let's do diversity, right, or whatever, but they're actually out there trying to find candidates and bring different people in, look outside of the normal channels as well. And I think that has helped. I don't want people with certain experiences. So I try to be inclusive by being exclusive of some of the things that have made teams fall into the same pattern of people and backgrounds that you get. So I know that's kind of weird to say we're inclusive by being exclusive, but I think that's where we've been able to get a lot of the different candidates that we get and on the team. And then for me, and I think it's just a mentality thing, you have to remove your biases, whether they are subconscious or not, and you really have to kind of close your eyes and look at every candidate and see what do they have to bring to the table. A question I like to ask in interviewing is, I've interviewed probably at least 1,000 or more SDRs over the last couple of years as we're building out teams. What is different about you than anybody else I've ever spoken to? And you'll get some really interesting things. People will open up. They'll tell you life stories and things that, when you think about diversity, it's not just, am I hiring African Americans or Asian Americans or, whatever, right? Or people of different religions, whatnot. It's also just different backgrounds. Where did you come from? What does your life look like? What brought you to this point here? And I think that's very, very valuable for all of us to learn and to grow. And I know a lot of the growth that I've done over the past 5 years is just learning from people that have completely different backgrounds than I do, and learning from people in different global regions and what's important to them. So it's on your management team, I think, and to partner with HR to make sure that you get the right mix of people in front of you, and then turn your blinders on and just listen to the person and dig into who they are and understand what their motivations are. Is that going to fit in my team? And then, like I said, I like to ask what's different. So is this something I don't have on my team? Because that's really important to me, is to fill those gaps of what we don't have. Is this a personality trait or a goal or something that I don't have in anyone else?
Love it. We're coming up on time for Q&A, so I want to make sure we get through the last reason why your reps may be leaving. Morgan, really quickly, if you can. You're a trainer. You train teams, so you're measuring success on how teams before after they're trained. Let me just ask you, and maybe you have something you already want to say, but anecdotally, could you see that when you're as a trainer, could you see that the more diverse teams, or could you understand, based on diversity and how companies are measuring that they perform naturally? Like, does the Forrester and LinkedIn, by the way, we can send out that link if you want to read that. It's pretty great. But could you sense that as a trainer, training all these different teams?
The sense of that the team was more dialed in, the sense of like,
yeah, the sense of that they typically performed better. Like the teams that were more diverse typically performed better.
Yeah, they perform better because there was different perspectives on how to get the job done, right? So if you only have a team that has one perspective on how to get it done, you don't have any other insights on how to from a lot of perspectives, SDRs or E's, whoever I'm training, on how to get more meetings. So if you only know one way, it's like, okay, we're just going to go this one way and we have nothing else. So I find that when there are teams that I've trained that are more diverse, the conversations are more collaborative. People are already trying out stuff that maybe I've even suggested because they're typically more outside of the box, and they're being more innovative, and they are looking to find ways to push the envelope because they already are based on who they've hired. So at least that's what I've seen from the trainings and coaches that I've done.
I love it. And I figure, most SDRs are somewhat competitive, and people interpret things their own way. So like Morgan said, right, you get different inputs, different outcomes because people interpret trainings, teachings different ways. So I love that. Again, just a reminder, a couple of things we're talking about on the reasons. One, flexibility in remote culture, work-life flow. We've talked a little bit about well-being, mental health, DEI commitment, and then last but not least, the one that everybody's been waiting for. I know you have. Because again, in addition, out of the 30,000 candidates last year that we screened, this one is a heavy one, and it's salaries, right? And so salary specifically about, are you paying people based on geo, right? What's the base level for entry-level SDRs? I put entry-level in quotations. Again, for the managers that it's called, the leaders that it's called, why do salaries matter? What can they do, right, to remain competitive? Let's go with, I'll let Morgan or Jason or Sophia, whoever wants to jump in. Let's jump in. This topic is so I'm just like, you know what? You have it.
I mean, I feel like, Jason, you got it?
I was saying not it because I didn't want to go first on talking about how much I'm paying my SDRs, but I'll bow to your expertise and I'll follow up afterwards. How about?
It's not anything too much I have to say on this one because I'm sorry to say this, but it depends, and I know no one likes that answer, but it really does, right? Because think about it. If you have, so I trained a team and they only have like 6 SDRs. However, all those 6 SDRs are enterprise named account SDRs. So their base is higher and their comp is higher. Period. They're not going to hire a lot of SDRs because they only are targeting 25 to 50 accounts, and the ACV is insane. So they're going to be paid more. Versus a company where you have like 120 SDRs and they're targeting business owners and gym owners and spa owners. That base and composition plan is completely different. So really what it comes down to is, let's take a step back before you even get in the organization. As a manager, you have to understand okay, what product am I selling? Is it an enterprise-based product? Is it a commercial-based product? What's the actual ACV? And the ACV is going to predicate how much your comp is going to be for that SDR as well. So you have to take that in consideration as you come into leadership on how you're going to allocate pay to SDRs, and you can figure out what the talk track is going to be. But that's also why this conversation is really hard, because enterprise SDRs, you obviously can pay way more than the SDR that's doing against all these other SDRs that are there. So that's just how I think about it. Region also is really tricky too, Brian, right? Because now we're remote. So if I'm in, Idaho, do I get the same paid as someone in San Francisco, even though that's going to be way more from the rent perspective? And there's all these questions. So I think it really comes down to product, ACV, what's going on? How can I also not always tap into the salary? Because some people, yes, they want the money, and we always think people in sales only want the money. However, some people just want recognition, right? So you have to understand, what does compensation actually mean? That's another question you have to ask SDRs, because I find some people don't really want the money. I know that's shocking to a lot of people in here, but leaders who have been in sales for a long time only wanted the money, but now it's changing. Some SDRs don't necessarily care about that. They want recognition. They want other things, right? So you also have to ask these questions to your team to figure out how to comp accordingly.
Yeah, I think the and Morgan touched on it. The most important thing is not what you're paid, but how you're paid, because there are a lot of variables. And you can look on Glassdoor and PayScale, and there's a bunch of tools out there that'll tell you, like, if I have this much experience and I live in this area, this is what I should get average for about this type of job. So you can do that on the internet. The most important thing is how you get paid. And I think one thing that I believe that has attracted talent to Big ID or to my teams in the past is that I keep the comp plan very, very simple. You don't need a spreadsheet. You don't need to wait for a comp team to send you out something so you understand how you get paid. You get paid on what we care about, and we care about meetings and opportunities. So 60-40 split, opportunities that get 60%, meetings get 40%, and there's your variable compensation. And that's all it is. We've got some spiffs and some bonuses and things like that we'll talk about, but we keep the compensation very, very simple. And then ask, if you're an individual contributor and you're interviewing for an SDR job, ask how many people are hitting quota, and give me specific numbers, right? Don't let a manager be like, oh, about 80% of people are hitting. No, I want to know, and any good manager should know that, even if I only have 7 people, if I do the math, 74% of my people are, it should be specific so you can understand what you're getting into. That's the biggest thing for me, is how I get paid. It's the most important thing when I'm building comp plans for my SDRs, but it's also the most important thing for me when I'm looking at a new opportunity. How am I going to get paid? If you say, I'm going to get Y number of dollars as a base and Z number of dollars as a variable, hey, that's neat, but how does that actually show up on my paycheck? What do I have to do to get there? How many people are getting there? What's the track record look like? Is this realistic? Because I could tell a candidate, hey, we'll pay you 150 grand as an SDR. What they don't know is that I'm going to make the quota so high they'll only ever make 90 or something like that, right? That's not fair, but at front they're going to be like, ooh, 150K, yeah, let me jump at that opportunity. So pay attention to the how, or the kind of the how it works, not really how much it is.
That is true, right? Yeah, I know a lot of the candidates that we screen, like, culture is a really big emphasis over salary in general right now, and like what you were saying just then, like, speaks to it about the details of how. We got a couple minutes. I'd love to do some Q&A if you don't mind. Really quick, so you kind of answered some of the question the person's asking, but the one thing I love the panel to answer, and for context, this is somebody that has a B2B solution, and they're trying to figure out, they're starting from scratch, right? And we kind of talked about the base and pay incentives, but let's talk about, like, job boards, like how you actually attract the candidates, right? So you're using job boards, on-site interviews versus hybrid interviews, solely hybrid interviews. Let's talk a little bit about those couple of things. Sophia, this might be a great opportunity, right, for you to kick us off on this.
Sure. So I can speak to how we find all of our Bay Area inbound sales development representatives through our apprenticeship program, which is through our partnership with Vendition. We found this to be extremely beneficial, and I didn't quite, and I know this is kind of tying into the end, but Asana Up is the development program that we have in place to create opportunities for individuals who are breaking into Asana from non-traditional, underrepresented background. And our mission is really to help create economic opportunity for these individuals by developing these programs and creating the skill set and network. So our apprentices are coming in with no direct sales experience. And so the main intention here is, how do we identify a partner that knows the competencies that we're looking for in a sales rep, and knows how to effectively help us train these individuals to get them going and really get them ramped in, because we know that the people who have the potential are going to be great at sales. And we don't require them to have that direct sales experience just to do the role. And so it's really, really important for us to align up front with partners that align with our mission, and that know about our goals and can help us to achieve our goals. So that's our main pipeline, and that's the specific way that we go about hiring our sales apprentices.
Good talk, Brian.
Yeah, my bad. Nathan, what about you? I know you have a unique hiring process, the way you recruit as well, where you're recruiting from. Maybe just share a little bit of insight with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, job boards. I think in the this was mentioned earlier, right? There's thousands of SDR jobs out there, so you can go to LinkedIn and Glassdoor, and we can put Indeed, and we can put our posting out there, and that's all fine and dandy. But it's going to be hard to find people. So we lean really heavily on referrals. We also, hopefully I didn't see any names I recognize on the guest list, but we also are really into finding people that have a couple of months experience at targeted competitors or companies that are adjacent to us. So they have some sort of experience. They've maybe been through an onboarding, but then we can try to bring them over. And then, you have to, I honestly believe now you have to partner with somebody. And I'm not just saying this because we are a partner with Vendition and they invited me on this webinar. We were actively looking for a way to help us hire and get in front of a lot of different people. And I think when you look at a company like Vendition or even some of their competitors, that is really going to help you get that pipeline generated. And then again, as you get more people in, you're asking for referrals. Do you have a buddy? Do you know anybody from a different company, et cetera? So that's where we've been finding a lot of our candidates is through those referrals, through competitors or other companies that I know are kind of close to what we do, or with if we're bringing in talent like career changers or fresh out of college, then we're partnering with somebody that can one, have the program to help build them up with us, as well as the flexibility. And I hate to sound rude here, but the flexibility within that kind of onboarding apprenticeship period to say, listen, this just isn't working out, and easily be able to swap in somebody else or easily hire them away if they're really, really good.
I love it. Morgan, real quick, are there any you're plugged into a lot of SDR communities, sales communities in general. Are there any things that like hiring managers just don't think about when it comes to attracting, if we're thinking about all the different things of why SDRs, right, are changing jobs from the aspect of, they're looking for work-life flow, flexibility, remote culture, mental health and wellness, DEI, compensation and how it's paid. Do you know of any other just non-traditional ways that people can recruit reps?
I think it's looking into other industries that people don't talk about enough. When I was a manager, there's a couple industries that we recruited in that were massively successful. And someone asked it earlier, honestly, like, this is just me, probably another hot take. I don't like hiring SDRs that have previous SDR experience. That's just me. However, there are certain scenarios where we can have that context. But I found, and literally just was like A/B test, I found the people who didn't have SDR experience or even sales experience, we can mold them and coach them easier because they don't have bad habits. And from an SDR, all you need for them to do is have good habits and have tenacity and get after it. So that's just my take on that. But these are a couple of industries that I would write down if you were hiring people. This is where I would go. Number one is insurance. Why? Because most people who are in insurance make a ton of cold calls, an egregious amount. It'd probably make y'all uncomfortable. And the thing is, they already have the tenacity. They already know what to do, but they're in an industry that most of the time doesn't have all the stuff we're talking about, mental health, It's just kind of get after it. So if they could be at a position where they could potentially make more money and be in a healthier place for themselves and their family, they're going to take that tech job that has an SDR piece. So insurance. I also like hospitality, right? That's another good place to look as well. So these are just examples, but I find that these people in these industries typically are pretty good people to go and recruit from and hire as well. Teachers also is another good example.
I'm glad to say the last one. I've been saying that for years, teachers. Again, you got to hold the attention of an entire room all day. Man, thank you so much. I know we're on video, but we give just a little cough tap to the panelists for being here today. I appreciate every single one of you. This was so valuable. Big shout out to Sales Hacker and Vendition for getting together about this. Make sure you connect with all the panelists. If you have any further questions, please connect with me. Send them to me. I'd love to get our team to answer any questions that you wanted to ask or couldn't share just yet. So we appreciate you so much for being here today. Y'all have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next time.